Good day. Good day and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms. It's so good to be back in the studio doing my black job. But speaking of such, as we approach probably the most impactful election of our lifetime, we had a lot to discuss. How you're doing mentally and emotionally. Help me to talk about this is an activist and social worker, because we all need one. For the last 35 years, she's been an activist, she's been a social worker in our community, helping to make life better, to make a way for our community. So I welcome Brenda Nelson to Mental Health and You.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for accepting this invitation. You know, as I said in the introduction, we're facing probably the most impactful election of our lifetime.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
You know, it's an election that a lot of people train as you are in social work and activism with a history of activism are needed more than ever. Why is it needed, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's needed because when we're looking at the vote and we're looking at our population of those who are eligible to vote and able to vote, we need to be on the forefront to encourage this. Okay, we have certain population individuals who we often forget and we don't advocate for. So we need to be able to step forward and to be that voice for those individuals. And also, we need to also be mindful that even ourselves, the importance of why it's important for me to vote. Because in order for me to go out and advocate or encourage anybody else to vote, I've got to be able to do it for myself first.
You know, you said something really interesting, Brenda. You got to be able to advocate, do it for yourself.
Yes.
But how do we convince that in our community? How can we convince those in our community that it is important, that it will make a difference?
Maybe we need to start with looking at our communities. Maybe where our communities are and what's the importance of voting and how it impacts our communities. We've lost a lot over the years in regards to what we used to have. And as you know, our votings now are being compromised. A lot of our rights have been compromised. So people have gotten discouraged. Our communities now, we used to have very close-knit with family, friends, and we all worked together. So voting was just almost something that we just did, just because it was always in the midst of us. Because if a family member wasn't doing it, it was a friend. It was always part of the culture to vote. And as the time went on in the years with the voting rights back in 2013 being gutted out and various things happening, it just opened the gateway for people to become discouraged. Because when you start hearing, we're going to block you from doing this, you can no longer vote this way, gerrymandering, all this, people get very discouraged.
Of course they do.
And again, like I said, we have to go back into our communities too and see exactly what are the benefits of voting. Because that's what we're told. Our voices need to be heard. There's the policies and there's things within voting that affords us types of rights and the benefits as citizens.
You know, you said something interesting. The things in our community, you know, whether it's housing, the things that mean something to us.
Yes.
Because we are citizens.
Yes.
And it seems to me that we got to recognize that our voice make a difference.
Yes, it
A
does.
voice counts. And how do we make it count? By our vote. I introduced you as a social worker and an activist.
Yes.
Those two are not necessarily connected, particularly in this work. You can be a social worker. I guess I'm asking, by the very nature of social work and activism, does that come hand in hand in your experience, or?
I would say that social work, active advocacy, it all comes together and it overlaps.
Well, because I asked you that because you can be a social worker or a mental health counselor, or peer specialist, and then at the end of the day, when you go home or when you go someplace, that's it. You just be so tired because this work can be exhausting.
That is the nature of the work. It is
Exhausting. But also, yes, activism can be exhausting.
Yes.
And activism by its nature is social work,
Yes.
whether you have a degree in it or not.
Yes.
But I want to ask, what inspired you to be a social worker? Who was it? What role models coming up that says, oh, this is interesting. This is what I want to do?
I think that a lot of it probably began when I was working with families in a community-based organization, and it was working with families in the community as a whole. And I was a lot younger than teenage years, and I did a lot of working with the families, advocating, you know, tutoring. So I had a lot of involvement there. And then moving out throughout the course of the years, I continued to work within that area with the community until I got into the field of social work directly.
Right.
That's when I started working with the Department of Social Services. But I think that once I got to the social services department, I really got more inspired because I worked more hands-on with families. I had the opportunity to work with different programs and just to see things firsthand. Before, I was just seeing things just on an experience basis, just working very topical with the families. But working with social services, you are directly involved with the families. And that gave me more inspiration because I saw more.
Did you come from a family of activists, of people who were consciously awoke about things? Or did you get your inspiration from other places besides the workplace, like the church or
I think I would say that everything.
Okay, you can wipe yourself. This activism makes you sweat, y'all. Go ahead.
But, you know, I got the inspiration. Yes, I can say with like family.
Yeah.
Because I have family in my family, and with my friends, I had individuals who had special needs or disabilities. You know, so I learned because I grew up with them. So there was nothing different about them. We just loved them. We grew up together. We played together. So we just seen life just as basically normal, even with some friends. So I was differentiating anything at that particular time. But coming into the services and seeing the treatment, the difference when you're in a more structured system. See, we were family, so we loved individuals. We gave them the nurturing.
Yes.
They thrived.
The difference between what and what? Was there a difference as far as the way certain people were treated as opposed to certain people? Was it a class difference, a race difference? What was the difference particularly as you remember that made you think, wow, this brings out not only the social worker but the activist in me?
Well, the difference I saw was that when you are surrounded by family, support, love, reinforcement, and somebody has your interest in there and you have all that together, you thrive a lot more. And then when I came into a system where I saw that, wow, everything is referral basis.
Yeah.
You have to wait maybe a month or two to get an appointment. I'm learning that this person has something going on, and I can't help but move the system just fast enough. But then I reflected back on that person in my family. Thank goodness that we had the love and the nurturing for that individual, because the same thing there is right here. But people have to wait a little bit more longer. And so that definitely inspired me to be an advocate, because I need you to get this person there not 2 months from now. We're talking about immediacy. So can you please give me not 2 months, but maybe a week or two? Yes. No more than 3. But it is the need. And that really, even to right now, in my work I've had over the years, is that sense of advocacy. Because people need somebody sometimes to talk on their behalf, to advocate for them, and to ensure that the service and benefits afforded everybody, that they have that as well.
And one of those services come by way of the vote. We always We always get back to the vote.
Yes, we do.
And we talked earlier about some of our inspirations.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes, we did.
You know, all that she went through in order to vote.
Yes.
Fannie Lou Hamer, we did a show, y'all, about some of the heroes of the movement. I talked about how she was one of my heroes. There was a woman born of like one of 20 kids in Mississippi who was beaten so many times.
That's right.
But she persisted because she knew that the vote meant something.
It meant, yes, it did.
She worked as a sharecropper. She didn't have much of an formal education. I think she didn't go any further than like 4th grade.
Okay.
But she was a woman. She was one of my inspirations because she understood the power that the vote. She said, because it's my passport to first-class citizenship. We talked about Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm, excellent role model.
The first woman to run for president. One of the inspirations for VP Harris.
Yes.
You know? What did it mean? And hopefully later on, you know, we're going to be showing a clip of Shirley Chisholm. Just to give you a little example of how far we have come from. And since 1972 when she made.
Yes.
You know, so
we have, and just to see those prominent individuals who back then were advocating, they were standing forerunners about voting, and just like you said, looking at them, and we ask ourselves, why shouldn't I vote? But why not? Because right then and there, that was the predicate to where we are right now. As you say, we now have Harris, but then they stood up in spite of everything.
Yes.
And
in spite of everything, when we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have we didn't have email, y'all. We didn't have cable TV. You know,
answering services.
Hello.
We were communicating just like you and I are by conversation.
Yes.
And she stood out there and she spoke to the people, and she told them exactly what it was that she perceived.
Yes.
And she said it.
Yes.
And so when, you know, we look at Individual Day again, I do go back to what you say when people say, I'm not going to vote. You know, to a degree, it can be very painful, because when you look historically at what we went through to get to vote, and like we discussed earlier, we first of all had to gain civil rights in order to get voting rights. We didn't get civil rights until 64 or 65.
Well, the civil
rights, and then we got the voting rights
Civil
after
Rights
that.
Act, the Civil Rights Act of
And it gave
of
us
1965 gave prohibited people discriminating voting on the basis of race.
Exactly.
It's been expanded since then to include other categories. But 1965, you know, I mean, we're not talking about prehistoric history, y'all. You know what I'm saying? But people died. People sweated. There was blood on that ballot. And I call this show, Brenda, Boldness in the Ballot, because it took a certain bold. When I look at those old reels and documentaries and read those old stories of Miss Fannie Lou, of Shirley Chisholm and others, so many countless others, it took a lot of boldness considering where they lived and the environment they lived, where their very life was put at danger just to having the daring, the dareness to even want to vote.
Yes,
you know,
and they put their lives at stake. And today, we have the.
Do you think sometimes? Do you think sometimes this generation is taking for granted those things?
Yes.
Yeah, because I can't help but think, you know, we got so much today. We got cable TV. We got cell phones. You know, we got sneakers. We got this. We got that. You know?
There's our stories, or the stories.
And we got everything. What we need to, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. The stories of, you know, voters' rights and how our parents and grandparents shared it with us does not, resonate with how they are today. It just does not. They don't receive it or hear it like we heard it. It doesn't sit with them where emotionally I can sit and watch, like you said, some of these pictures. I can actually tear up sometimes just to see what people went through to get it, and just thinking about my own relatives who did it. But it is a big difference today, like you said, with our generation, with the generation now, in regards to how they see voting, the significance of voting, what it means. And then you have a lot of social media, because we have a large population that grew up on social media. So a lot of that misinformation
Yes.
on the social media as well.
And how, as an activist, how can we counter that? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
It
There's a
is.
lot of misinformation on social media and, you know, so many other different platforms. And a lot of young people, they listen to that and take it as gospel.
Yes,
As we speak, we're still getting misinformation.
and
So how as an activist, you want somebody to vote, how do you counter that? You know, somebody's going to tell you, well, their vote's not count, their vote won't count, it doesn't make a difference. You know, because I've heard about voting on this platform, I heard about voting on
Yes.
that platform.
Yes.
You know, I don't see the difference in my life.
with the
Another
vote.
misinformation. How do we make it concrete? How, as an activist, your task, that we can make it concrete, that it does make a difference? How do we connect the dots? Voting Voting will get to you this, that housing, those jobs, that education opportunities.
Yes.
You know, as we speak, we talked about it earlier. I mean, Project 2025.
Oh,
It
boy,
is threatening to put an end to a whole lot of things that we take for granted,
Kind of
that
like-
our ancestors worked for.
Kind of like Back to the Future, right?
Hello now.
Back to the Future. I mean, everything that was in place then and we're here now. But I really urge people, because I like facts.
Okay.
Let's look it up before we start to really
You
try
mean,
to.
you mean
ham-
actually
for
doing
the
research?
misinformation.
Actually doing research?
But we have to start
Yes.
getting back into reading
Yes.
and factual, because to sit there and challenge somebody and have these conversations and misinformation when you haven't gone to look it up yourself to actually find out. That's what we have to start doing, because that's going to be our platform of getting the correct information.
Well, you know,
We have access to everything. People just Google things in their phone just like this.
yes.
There's a lot of ways in which we can. And you know, also, we need to sit together sometimes amongst ourselves and have these conversations too. And we need to also meet with our children, sometimes our grandkids, on family, when we're together. We don't have to sit to have arguments or debates, but just basically to update each other and to share ways and maybe which we can, well, work with our kids or our grandkids, whomever, because we spend a lot of time together, I'm sure, some families, on sometimes addressing or looking at ways when you need to get facts. And if not, ask questions,
Yes.
because it is our job and our role as parents, grandparents, for the kids to teach them.
The most challenging thing as a social worker, as an activist today, what has been for you?
Working within social services and being a social worker, and I'm not saying that I don't help, but I do help. But I wish that the support for social workers and also to listen a little bit more to what social workers have to say, because you're directly involved. You're that person who's on the forefront. And sometimes people don't relate to everybody, but when you're sitting here and I'm doing that social work role, I'm advocating for you. So when I do come back and I'm dealing with agencies, systems, so on and so forth, that's going to make this individual's life better, I need you to hear me.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to break these walls down of everything that's so, well, we have to do it this way. It has to be done that way. You got to say,
Yes.
sometimes you have to hear what I'm saying, because it may work that when I can go with you and we can do it this way, but you know what, this person also has a little bit, and I'm working with this person, so I'm going to say, try it this way too. I need to tailor
Yes.
your services
Yes.
for this individual, because everything does not work for everybody.
There you go. There you go. You know, Brenda, we were talking about some of our inspirations earlier. And we're going to be going to a clip that I wanted the audience to see soon of Shirley Chisholm.
Yes.
Because as
She's
we approach this election year, this most impactful of election years, in my opinion, you know, it's going to change a lot of lives.
It is.
It already is changing a lot of lives. A lot of lives are going to be impacted in ways that you may not even realize yet.
But it's
And this was a woman back in 1972, y'all, who decided that she was going to take on a system. This was a beautiful black woman from her family was from the Bahamas, or she was born and raised, I believe, in Brooklyn.
That's
Shirley
right.
Chisholm.
Yes.
She was the first black woman in Congress.
Of Caribbean descent.
Yes.
Of Caribbean descent.
Yes. And one of the inspirations I've heard for VP Harris, behind VP Harris's run. But I felt it was necessary to show this so people can see where representation
Yes.
is important, how representation plays a part. I've spoken to a lot of people, young people, clients, whatever, and sometimes I see like a hopelessness in them.
You see hopelessness?
But I also see a resiliency in some.
And some I do, yes. Yes.
And I kind of like, I want to concentrate on that resilientness, that resilient spirit. Sometimes I feel a little down myself. I get it. But there's also this joy as well.
There's
There's
going to be
also joy. Yes, we're going to have our rough times and we're going to have our joyous times.
And we say the children are our future.
Yes.
That's and I take that to heart, the future. So all this with the vote and everything, the impact, they going to have to carry that torch.
And that's why
And
it's
we
important.
have to encourage, yes.
That's why it's important. That's why it was important to Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
Because she wanted something to leave. She wanted a better life. That's
And we
why it
talk
was
about her
important
now.
to Shirley Chisholm. That's why it's important. And all of those activists, those who came before and
Yes.
came after. I mean, we can talk about Ella Baker. We can talk about Rosa Parks. I mean, the list just go on and on.
Yes. Women
it just goes down the line.
That's right. Yes.
Even before then, Harriet Tubman wanted freedom. What did that mean to her? She didn't want to be a slave anymore. So it was a boldness that made her do what she did.
Yes, it was.
You
I like
know?
your word boldness, because you're right. It's
You
that
know?
boldness that, and I
Make
can
you want
use
to
that
take
too.
risks, because the risks you
Yes.
take will lead to a better. You will have a stake in this life. Just have a stake in this country. And as we prepare to watch this clip, y'all think about the boldness of 1972, being a black woman.
1972.
That wasn't
Yes.
yesterday, 1972. I know a lot of y'all probably wasn't even born. Maybe some of your parents weren't even born. But this is a black woman who said, I'm doing this because I want to make a difference. And we need to remember that. We need to remember that when we think about, should I vote or should I not? So we're going to show this. Shirley Chisholm, 1972. You can run it.
I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America. I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman, and I'm equally proud of that. I am not the candidate of any political bosses or fat cats or special interests. I stand here now without endorsement from many big-name politicians or celebrities or any other kind of prop. I do not intend to offer to you the tired and glib cliches which for too long have been an accepted part of our political life. I am the candidate of the people of America. fellow Americans, we have looked in vain to the Nixon administration for the courage, the spirit, the character, and the words to lift us, to bring out the best in us, to rekindle in each of us our faith in the American dream. Yet all that we have received in return is just another smooth exercise in political manipulation, deceit and deception, callousness and indifference to our individual problems, and the disgusting playing of divisive politics, pitting the young against the old, labor against management, North against South, black against white. The abiding concern of this administration has been one of political expediency rather than the needs of man's nature. The president has broken his promises to us and has therefore lost his claim to our trust and confidence in him. I cannot believe that this administration would have ever been elected 4 years ago if we had known then what we know today. But we are entering a new era in which we must, as Americans, demand stature and size in our national leadership. Leadership which is fresh, leadership which is open, and leadership which is receptive to the problems of all Americans.
That's a definition of boldness.
Yes, it is.
That's a definition of boldness in the ballot, y'all. That's why I want to call this show. There's a boldness in the ballot. When you look at that footage, 1972, this bold black woman can get out there and do that in spite of everything.
Yes, she did.
That's an inspiration. That should be an inspiration. What do you think when you watch that? As we come to a close.
As I watched that, I just saw the powerfulness.
Yes.
And again, the reuniting of the inspiration in me to see that she is there, back there in 72, and then moving fast forward over the years, all the other females who have also at some point become elevated, stepped up into the political field. But looking where we are today, the trailblazer from then to now.
Brenda,
so powerful and inspirational, exactly, is
Brenda
what it was.
Nelson, I want to thank you so much for being a part of Mental Health and You. And I want to tell y'all, get bold in the ballot. For Mental Health and You, I'm Cynthia Timms. Now go out there. Thank you so much, beloved. Good night.